This is the Tangzu HBB XUAN, and it's one of the cleanest IEMs you can get under $100. In fact, it's so clean that the Nova might be in a little trouble. We also have the SHOZY P20, which sounds really unique actually, probably one of my favorite planars right now. But starting with the HBBs, this follows a Harman-like presentation from the low end to the treble, with the main difference being that there's less low end and upper mids compared to Harman 2019. Now this decrease in the amount from both ends means that the XN scales very well while giving you that clean vocal presentation. The upper mids cut is also helpful with energetic genres like J-pop, K-pop, EDM, and it tames the vocals and some of the electronic elements from those genres that becomes overly sharp. And on top of that, the XN also has a solid extension in the treble, which gives you that air and feeling of like space that stops the sound from feeling closed in or too dark. The treble is nicely presented. It isn't too like in your face or hidden away. It's where it needs to be at like a good distance. It's quote unquote traditional, vocal distance, and you can still pick them out without coming off as like too forward or fatiguing. It doesn't lean towards male or female vocals. It's pretty neutral in terms of like the vocal presentation. It's not going to be super sparkly, nor is it going to be like husky and overly thick and warm. The bass is also well textured and separated. It's punchy, it has a nice slam to it, it's not overwhelming, and the XN fills in the slight mid-bass scoop from the Nova. That some found to be a little bit too thin, making the drums, bass guitars, and male vocals sound a bit heavier and more weighted on the XN. Mid-range wise, the separation is nicely laid out in front of you. It's got a good amount of like detail and separation, and the vocals are open, extended, and not like closed in. It's a pretty standard presentation as you would expect from like a Harman tuned IEM, or in other words, the XN doesn't have any quote unquote special sauce, but the overall balance of all the frequencies together makes the HBBs a great pick if you wanted something like clean and quote unquote correct sounding that works very well with many genres. If I were to summarize the sound, the XN is very harmonious. It's a tamer in Harman 2019 with no frequency really like sticking out from one another, smooth, and scales very well as the 4 to 8K cut and the decrease of bass really allows you to like crank them up without getting things too shouty or too fatiguing. Now compared to the Nova, my unit of the HBB is essentially like a mini Nova. They grab very close, with the difference being that the Nova is more energetic in the upper mids and the sub bass. The extension is better there, and it's also a little more detailed and better in the resolution. But Timmy's unit actually grabs way more similar to the Nova, like almost identical. So depending on the unit you get, you'll either end up with a version of Nova that's better at scaling and less fatiguing like mine, or just like a straight up cheaper Nova, which either way is a win-win in my books. You also get 2 pairs of Senkai tips, which is valued to be at like $26, so pretty nice deal in my opinion. And if you're looking just for like overall clean, well balanced, and all rounder under $100, then the XN is a pretty great pick. However, the real question is, can it beat the LM? Kinda. Now, some units of the LM does graph brighter than the one I have, so for those looking for like a less energetic and cleaner sound, the XN would be better. Tamer, it's less fatiguing, and the better pick there. But going based off of my unit that's not overly bright, I do still prefer the LM because the extra low end and the treble does give it more like energetic and engaging feeling to the sound, especially with like the cymbal detail and the drum kicks and the guitar riffs. They just go a lot harder and it's a little bit more immersive. Technical performance wise, based off my unit, my LM is more resolving and more detailed, but that doesn't mean the XN isn't good. It's still very solid, around the same as the HEXA, I would say. Maybe not as detailed in the treble as the HEXA, but it's essentially just like a smoother version of the HEXA, because the HEXA can get like a bit peaky in the treble, which the XN fixes. But if you already own the HEXA, then the XN becomes a bit redundant because they sound very similar. And likewise, if you also have the Olina SE, then it's also very similar there as well. Similar Harman tuning, but the Olinas are just a little bit brighter. So unless you really like that Harman sound and you just wanted something smoother and less energetic like the XN and not like the Olina SE, then I'll just save up and get something with like a bigger jump. Now versus some of the planars like the T10, the F1 Pro, the Klanar, I like the XN more. It sounds more natural without any of that like light, sharp planar timbre. Now it's not as resolving as the planars, but the low end on the XN does feel more impactful. It feels heavier, and the vocals sound more like grounded and powerful and just more natural. To me, the HBBs overall just sounds more correct and less sharp, which allows it to scale better and be more immersive. But if you're looking for a good side grade to the XN and to those like Harman inspired tunings, then the SHOZY P20 would be a good pick. These are pretty great. I would describe the overall sound as a warm but also sparkly presentation with tamer vocals. The mid bass is really juicy, lots of impact and texture, a lot more than the XN, great rumble, and the low end spreads out more enveloping the sound and leaning the P20 towards the warmer side of things. Now, warm IEMs usually are smoother, however the P20 is warm but also adds a little bit of that liveliness and like sparkle on top, and in my opinion, because of the combination of the extra mid bass plus the extra treble while, you know, taming the upper mid so things don't get fatiguing, the P20 does quote unquote have like, you know, special sauce, and they're quite different from all the other planars, even the P1 Max too. This is because the treble on the P20 is a lot airier, it's sparkly, and gives off the like OCD imaging feeling, very lively but not fatiguing and sharp like the 700Hz Aurora or the Kiwi's Melody that can get a bit too sharp because of the, you know, extra upper mids, but these don't have the extra upper mids, so the balance is pretty good. And because the extra mid bass is there as well, it also like adds on top of that balance and gives it that like warm but still like sparkly and energetic feeling. I tested these with a lot of different genres. These are good for K-pop, J-pop, pop, even like rock and hip-hop, because the low end and the energy and the texture is there while giving you that like splashy treble, like the tingly OCD like imaging, and that's all creates like a warm but like still again sparkly landscape without becoming over fatiguing because it doesn't boost the upper mids. If I were to use an analogy, the P20 reminds me of like a warm sunny day at the beach, whereas like the XN is kind of just like a clean spring day, not too warm but not too cold either, just like good temperature, right? Whereas like another unique planar, the original P1 Max before the retune, is more kind of like mid-centric and is like a orange sunset instead. So all three of these have like different sound signatures, and you really can't go wrong with any of them. But one potential issue is that the P20 does take a hit in the vocals because, you know, it's not as open and extended because the upper mids are cut, as well as just like more mid bass kind of like warms up the vocals, makes them sound a little bit more forward, a little bit more like not congested, but a little bit more like huskier. So vocal wise, I would still take the HBBs because they're just more open, they have more extension, and they feel like more complete. But these are just like a really fun set to listen to. Definitely not balanced, but you know, still super enjoyable if you don't mind trading off some vocals for that like sparkly imaging and just like a warm smooth tuning on top of that. Because in terms of planar timbre, the P20 is actually like pretty fine. Now the XN is still going to sound more natural because it's just cleaner, not as warm, but you know, it's not as offensive as the other planars that can come off as a bit too light and too like sizzly and sharp. And compared to the P1 Max 2, they're actually very similar. The Pandas and the XN both are like kind of like all-rounder sets, with like the main difference being that the Pandas have a little bit better resolution, but like it takes a hit in the timbre and like the bass, whereas the XN is more natural and it has better bass, and then the P20 is just like an all different sound compared to both of them. So instead of getting a more expensive like all-rounder IEM like the Dusk, I would just grab the XN for that like clean, balanced all-rounder sound, and then the P20 for that sparkly, warm presentations, as both of these are great complementary sets to one and another. Now the Nova still has its place compared to my unit of the HBBs because, you know, my unit does have less upper mids and like a sub bass roll off compared to my Novas, but like I would just get the P20 and then get the, you know, the HBBs and have like a different flavor. You know, it's just more fun that way. But yeah, aside from that, the HBBs are pretty great values, especially, you know, if you take into account the Senkai tips. I love those, fits me very well. But I mean, aside from that, I hope you guys found this review to be helpful. Thanks for watching, and I'll see everyone in the next one. Shout out to Jeff Young, Raw X Cat, Dom Q, Star Buccaneers, Joel Pink, Discall Scaldus, B_Urac, Mystic Spoon Attack, Oh Really, Walker Standard, User, Ernest, Contain Guava Juice Gain, Patrick, Bell Cell Kel, Rosa the Kelf, Perry Jat, Polly, Mr. Gorillas, Antoristo, Gis Sang Young, Tomat Pafrache, Ed, Harry, Christopher, Federico, Name, and Henry. Thank you guys so much for the support.